What's happened is sent the message, agent received it, has to think about what it wants to do. It called the two tools, right? So it called the brand playbook so that it can grab and understand what's going on with. So when it comes to the plan, here's what I'm thinking. We can talk a little bit about where this fits into your business first so that you can know where there's utility when it comes to this little guy here that we built in N8N. Then we'll do a little demo and walkthrough of exactly how it works and the nuances around the architecture of it. We're going to talk a little bit about when to use this instead of ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or something like that. And then we're going to talk about managing expectations because in my experience so far, a lot of the utility that you can get from agents today actually comes down to managing expectations around what they can and cannot do. And they can do a lot. But I think there's been a lot of overselling of what agents can do, but also on the other side of it, some underselling of not being ready enough, which I don't think is accurate as well. And then we will round off with the next evolution of this agent that can come in the next few days or weeks or months. So let's start off and talk about where this fits into your business. When it comes to email marketing, the way I like to think about it is there's two types. So there is type 1, which is, let me do some writing here. There is your plain text emails. And the way I think about it is kind of like the right hand and the left hand of your business. They are both important to have and they're both important to use. And you don't have to only use your right hand all the time, your left hand. So there's plain text emails. And then there is, on the other side of that, there is image emails. And so an example of a brand that's doing this really well when it comes to leveraging both the right hand and the left hand is one of my favorite brands of 2024 going into 2025, Hollow Alpaca Socks. And if you look at emails that they've sent in the last month or so, you can see that there's a distribution of plain text, image, image, plain text, image, image, plain text. And so where this fits into your business is to support you on getting these plain text emails written. And it can actually be repurposed for the image ones because all imagery is based on messaging first. But for the scope that I've built this for specifically, it is really good for me for plain text. And it does a really good job of it. And for my background in direct response online, I actually gravitate a lot towards plain text emails just because it's more minimalist, it's more simple, and I'm a writer by default. That's sort of where I gravitate towards as a medium for thinking. So I like it a lot, which means I like to market that way too. However, it doesn't have to be the only thing that you do, but it can be a part of your marketing department, your marketing processes that you run on your marketing calendar and you schedule out on certain days. You're going to do plain text. On certain days, you're going to do image. And I have a friend who runs a brand that's doing about 200 to 300K per month right now. And he just actually ran an experiment for, I think, 3 or 4 months where he worked with an email marketing agency and he made a big shift from doing pretty much all plain text email to all image emails. And he got a lot of great feedback from his peers about how great they were looking. However, when it came to the dollars and cents at the end of the day, it kind of looked more like this, where plain text emails meaningfully outperformed the image emails. So it's something for you to consider. And this is why I wanted to talk about where it fits into your business, because if you are currently in the earlier stages of building your brand, or if you're reconsidering what it is you can do to hit your next forecast that you might not be on track for, you can reconsider when, how, and where you use your plain text emails. So that gives a little bit of a rundown of why this agent was built in the first place. Because right now, a lot of the content that I'm seeing around agents is personal assistant agents, which I think is cool, but I think this is cooler because this can make you money, right? As far as a demo and a walkthrough goes, what I want to do is a bit of a walkthrough first so that you can understand the architecture of what it looks like when it comes to planning out the agent, especially if it's the first time that you're building an agent, because the architecture will allow you to understand foundations that let you build further agents down the road. So we'll start with that and then we'll do a bit of a demo. So the way that it works is Slack is the interface in which we are communicating with the agent. On either side, there's an input of Slack and then it outputs through Slack. So you send a message and then you receive a message from it as if it was a team member almost. Every agent that you build inside of N8N has a few different functions, I'll call them. So there's a brain, right? So there's a model that you hook it up to. In this case, we're using OpenAI. There is memory, which is used for the context window. So as an example, if you ask ChatGPT, or you tell ChatGPT rather, that you had, let's say, pizza for lunch today, and then 3 weeks later, you come back and say, hey, ChatGPT, what did I have for lunch 3 weeks ago? It might have forgotten if it didn't store it in its RAG system for its memory. And that's because it lost context because you might have had like 100 conversations since that note about having pizza on that first week over here. So that is what the memory allows you to do. And then what separates this from just an API call to a large language model, and by this I mean the agent, is that it has tooling that it can call based on what you input as a message, right? You tell it your request, and then it can actually make its own decision to say, hey, I am going to go use this tool, and then I'm going to think about it and work on it using this. So in this case, the architecture of it from a marketing perspective is we have an email swipe file of emails that we want to model, because I'm a big fan of not starting from scratch. And then we also have a brand playbook to allow for the agent to have some context on who we are and what our boundaries are for how it is we communicate when it comes to our email marketing. So those are the main tools that you're always going to need. You're going to need a chat model, you're going to need memory, and then you're going to need tooling. And actually what I should have said was functions. And then the last thing is inside of the agent, there is a system prompt that we are going to get into further when we talk about the build. So that covers a bit of the overview. And now we're going to take the abstraction of, hey, here's the architecture of the agent. And then here's a demo of it so that you can see and watch what it's like when it actually does its job. And before we do the demo, what I want to do is give some context on the demo itself, which is another brand that I'm a fan of is Perfect White Tea over here. So I'm going to bring them up because one of the co-founders has a husband that's quite active on Twitter, and he's just a really cool dude. And he runs their marketing for them. And they're an 8-figure business that's just blowing up right now. And one of the things that I love about their brand just personally is how they've been able to, since 2020, sell elevated basics. And I don't want to misrepresent them by calling them elevated basics. That may not be an accurate way to represent what it is that they actually bring to the market. But I love that they're able to sell t-shirts and V-necks and tank tops for $100 a pop, because it's awesome. It's just awesome from a business perspective. I love that they're able to pull it off since 2020. So we're going to do some demo emails for them where the brand playbook has stuff from Perfect White Tea that I collected using ChatGPT. And then we have the swipe file, which was taken from Hollow Socks example emails. And I'm going to walk you through later after the demo what these actually look like when it comes to the information that was put inside of the tools that the agent is calling. So let's hop into a little bit of a demo. I'm going to pull up Slack here. And what we're going to do is a test request to just see what's going to spit out based on the system as it's built right now. So as an example, here's what I'm going to write. Today is Feb 25. International Women's Day is March the 8th. I'd like to send emails to our list on March 3, 5, and 8. Our promo is buy two, get two free, which I don't think this brand ever does. So it's not accurate, but for the sake of demonstration of what actually ends up happening when you run the agent, or rather when you work with the agent, it's going to make it very clear, because buy two, get two free is just, it stands out. Make sure to include a metaphor in each email that relates our products to the spirit of International Women's Day. Draft them, please. And so I'm going to send this in. It's not going to do anything because I got to do text workflow first. So I'm actually go back and I'm going to actually just copy and paste this. Boom. And then I'm going to pop over here so you can see what's happening. So I'm going to narrate and commentate a little bit. So what's happened is sent the message, agent received it, has to think about what it wants to do. It called the two tools, right? So it called the brand playbook so that it can grab and understand what's going on with the context, rather, that I wanted it to get as it pertained to the business of Perfect White Tea. And then it also grabbed a swipe file in order to grab the inspiration for writing the emails. And then it was also working with the chat model in order to actually come up with a synthesis of what I told it to do, well, what I had to have it programmed with when it comes to the system prompt and also the information that's inside the tooling. So if we go back to Slack, let's take a look and read. So there's already some things here that I don't like that I see at a glance. And we're going to do this live where I'm going to walk through sort of refining what it is that I want with the agent here, but then also make some commentary upon how would I implement this feedback to the agent so that it could keep it for the long term, because there's a few options in which you can do that. Let's read what it's come up with. So based on the brand playbook and email swipe file analysis, here are drafts for the 3 emails tailored for International Women's Day. Email number 1, and I'm just going to read one of them because that'll give the gist of what's going on here. Hi there. I hate this. I don't think Perfect White Tea ever communicates this way. But again, the point of me doing this demo for you is not to show you the perfect emails. It's to show you, hey, this is what happens with the process. And then from there, we refine it in order to get what it is that we want. And of course, with your business, unless you are running Perfect White Tea, it's going to be different for you. So you're going to need different system prompt. You're going to need different tools, or rather, you're going to need different content. And then you're going to need further refinements based on the iterative process that is inevitable with anything you do, whether it's with a human being or whether it's with an AI agent. So let's read it. As we prepare for International Women's Day, we can't help but think about the strength and grace that women exude, much like how our perfect tea complements your every move. Don't like the emojis here because I don't think the brand ever uses emojis. Our teas are like the foundation of a great outfit, reliable, versatile, and elevating everything it touches, just as women do every day. To celebrate, we're offering a special buy two, get two teas. Buy 2 teas, get 2 free. It's our way of cheering for the women who wear them. Discover styles that empower you. Shop now. Warm regards, Perfect White Tea. So there's a few things that we would need to touch up if we want this to be ready to go. And this is just from me looking at the brand from the outside in, which could be a very inaccurate assessment of how they actually like to run. But what I would probably do is make all of the font lowercase, because that's typically how they run that's typically how they represent themselves from everything I've seen from their emails and their website copy. So I'll go lowercase. I would kill off just go back to Slack. I would kill off the warm regards. That's not really how they talk. So those nuances around sign-offs and vocabulary nuances, we would make updates to. And I'm going to show you how and where you can consider doing that. So there's 2 places. One of them is within the system prompt itself, when you actually write out a lot of the nuances and instructions that you want the agent to execute for you. The other place that you could do, and this is a little bit more user-friendly for, let's say if this agent is connected to a Slack channel that multiple people on your team are interfacing with, and they don't like looking at stuff like this where it might look a little bit overwhelming when it comes to this style of font and how it looks codey and all that sort of stuff. What you can do instead is actually come into here and you can write out that, hey, brand voice and tone guidelines, we always write in lowercase. We never use emojis, that sort of thing. So you just add it to here. And because when we looked at the demo over here of what happened with the agent, while it was working, we actually saw that it went to the brand playbook to grab information about it because that's what's written in the prompt. So if you come here and you look at the output of what it did when it called the tool, you can actually see that it ingested about the brand that was placed inside of this Google Doc. So that's a little demo of it. And we'll get into further nuances about it when we go through the build. But what I think is worth talking about now that we've done the demo is when and why to use this instead of something like ChatGPT or Claude. And so the way I think about it is there's 3 reasons why I think we might want to consider using an agent as opposed to using Claude or ChatGPT in sort of the personal UIs. So number 1 is going to be friction, right? Whenever you want to use ChatGPT or Claude, you do have to switch over to a new app, whether that's in your browser or whether that's another app inside of run as a desktop client, right? And so if you are already spending most of your time in Slack, talking to the rest of your team, talking to freelancers and contractors, talking to other agencies, Slack is just a place you're already existing. And especially in a team environment, that's where you are hanging out. That's just one less layer of friction for you to be able to get work done and get ideation done together with an agent. So that's number 1. Right. Number 2 is going to be the ease of updating knowledge bases. So what I just talked about right now is if, let's say, the output that we got over here, I had a bunch of feedback around styling and OGs and probably tone and vocabulary, right? If I want the agent to get better at it, the ability to update and make changes to the information that it's drawing from in order to do its job is very simple, because all I have to do is what I just talked about earlier, is I could just come into this Google Doc, which everyone on your team can have access to. And what you can do is make your updates, right? Over here. Whereas in something like ChatGPT projects or Claude projects, where you upload a lot of documents for it to refer to in order to get work done for you, it's just not as simple, right? You got to export whatever new documentation you want it to refer to as a PDF or a text file or a markdown file or whatever it is. You have to re-upload it. You have to delete the old one, right? It's more friction, right? Whereas in this case, all you have to do is come into an existing Google Doc and change it. And then also, because it's less of a black box than ChatGPT or Claude, the information that it's receiving when it calls this tool, right? You can see, move myself over here. You can see what it's grabbed, right? And you can see what it has had access to. And so whether there's a problem, because you can check the outputs on whether it's missing that piece of information that was really key. So for example, if I inputted the fact that you should never use emojis, I can see whether or not it was able to read that information. And there's also optionality too, because if, let's say, putting it into this tool over here doesn't do a good enough job, you can always come into the system prompt and write that in there as well to sort of like quote unquote hard code it in. All right. And number 3, the third reason why I think there's wonderful utility in using this agent right now as it stands, even not in its final form, is that team can collaborate, right? When it comes to ChatGPT and Claude, a lot of the times we are using that in a solo siloed environment, right? Where it's just you and the large language model, or rather you and the interface that interfaces with the large language model. So in this case with Slack, right, I can invite other people into this channel to collaborate with me on this agent, and it responds when you do the @ function and you speak specifically to the agent. And so it's not necessarily going to take the replies of every single reply that, let's say, you got Sally, Shirley, and Stephanie on your team who are all talking about these emails. Unless you do the @ function to actually call out the agent, it's not going to respond to every single one of those messages. So you can have your own chats about what you like and don't like about it, and then call the agent to say, hey, this is what we all agreed upon that we want you to change, spit it back out for us, and then we're going to review it again. So at this time, I think there's still a lot of utility in being able to use an agent like this so that as a team, you can collaborate. So we have made some good traction together here. So we've done the demo. We talked about where it fits into your business as the right hand and the left hand. And we've also talked about when to use this instead of ChatGPT, when and why rather. So now we can get into some of the fun stuff, which is talking about the build and the nuances around what goes into each of them. And I'm not going to do a full from scratch build, but if you need help with the nuances of some of the more tricky stuff when it comes to setting up credentials and integrations, you can always check out our community where we will support you with more of that hands-on sort of stuff. So when it comes to build, we got a Slack trigger. I'm going to pull this up. The way that it's engineered, and again, you can watch this slowly to just replicate what it is that we have set up here. Essentially, we have a channel that we are watching 4 messages from. And then what we have is the agent. And the agent, the important thing to talk about here is going to be the system prompt. So I'm going to pull it up, and what I'm going to do is actually walk through it in depth together with you so that you can, 1, copy it verbatim if you want, and then iterate on it from there, and 2, just look at a little bit of the nuances on how this was structured. I like doing my prompts in Markdown because I naturally like to write in Markdown. I think there's sort of 2 camps that I've seen so far. Is some people like to do Markdown and some people like to do XML. I just prefer Markdown because I've been using Markdown for a while. So the role definition, you are an email copywriter, AI email copywriter for our e-commerce brand. Your primary task is to generate plain text emails that align with our brand's voice, products, and customer personas. Your tools available. You got the brand playbook. And so I've named the tools very specifically brand playbook and email swipe files so that when I do the writing of the system prompt, I'm matching the names of the tools so that there is less ambiguity and confusion for the agent. So the tools available, there's a brand playbook, contains contextual information about our brand, products, and target customer personas. And then we have email swipe file, a collection of plain text email examples from another brand that we aim to model. And then here's the instructions. Always reference the brand playbook first to ensure consistency with our brand voice, messaging, and customer expectations. Use the email swipe file as inspiration, but do not copy verbatim. Adapt the structure, tone, and style to fit our brand. Write in natural conversational language as if it were coming from a real person, avoiding overly promotional or robotic phrasing. Keep the email concise and scannable, ensuring key takeaways are easy to grasp. Prioritize clarity, engagement, and relevance over excessive detail or fluff. Ensure the email feels authentic, personalized, while maintaining a casual yet persuasive tone. Then we have the output of what it needs to basically present as a deliverable. So the output, generate a complete plain text email that fits the requested purpose, e.g. a product launch, promotion, re-engagement. For the case of just remove the annotations. For the case of here, we were talking about a promotion. So it knew that if the request lacks specifics, ask clarifying questions before proceeding. Do not include unnecessary formatting. Output should be simple, readable text. Always check for cohesion, natural flow, and alignment with our brand identity before finalizing. Final check for the agent. Does the email reflect our brand voice and value? Does it feel genuine and engaging, not overly salesy? Does it follow the best structural elements from the swipe file while staying original? Is the call to action clear and compelling? If all checks pass, please proceed with sending the final output. And then also, we have today's date for reference. This is just in JSON, and you don't have to really know too much about this when it comes to coding. This is just basically tells the agent what day and time it is right now. It basically is like a watch to wear, so that when you talk, when I said over here, today is February the 25th, we would just be on the same page with it. Whereas if you don't give it the date and time for reference, it's not going to know that. Or rather, it's not going to know today's date and time. So it might just get a little confused. And so I just want to reduce as much potential confusion as possible so that in the future, let's say I don't give the dates, I can still say, hey, I need an email 2 weeks from now. And it's going to know what date to set that for when it comes to the context of when I need that email to be written for, let's say St. Patrick's Day or something like that. So that's the system prompt. And so that should give you a bit of a picture on how everything is in together, right? There is the input from us as users. There is the system prompt and the AI agent, which allows it to know and have instructions for what to do with the tools that it has access to, because it doesn't always call tools unless you specify for it to, or what it is that you're asking in the input is relatively simple in that it wouldn't need a system prompt for being able to output what it is that you want. In our case, because we do have some specifics around exactly what it is we want to be a little bit more clear. And now let's talk a little bit about each of the components. So the memory, pretty straightforward. How you get this is through using a credential from OpenAI, which is typically a token. And that's super easy to set up on the OpenAI API website. You just got to go over here and create new credential, open docs, and then you can hop over to OpenAI and grab that. And for more of this nuanced stuff around integrations and credentials and all that sort of stuff, we can help you with that in our community. Just hop on the email list and pay attention to our emails, and you can join if you feel called to. So we're using just 4.0 over here. You could probably switch over to 4.0 mini if you want to save money. For tasks like writing, I personally like using 4.0 just because the leverage on good writing is worth it to me. And it's also much less expensive than, let's say, outsourcing the writing to a very expensive copywriter. So I feel like the trade-off is still worth it using 4.0, but you have the option to use any model that you want, whether it's 4.0, 4.0 mini, or Claude Sonnet, whatever it is, you can choose. But our setup is OpenAI, GPT 4.0. For window buffer memory, we are just using a context window length of 5. You can expand that to whatever you want. Again, for my use case, I'm happy with 5 because I don't really care for it to know beyond that right now. But if I ever had a lot of back and forth with it, I'd probably switch it over. And if I really wanted to make this more robust, I might move over to something like Postgres to use it. But I think for a lot of our use cases as operators and marketers, I don't think we need to go to that extent for this specific use case. Email swipe file. So this is a call to Google Docs, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the swipe file itself. So this essentially contains the emails that were from here, right? These plain text emails from Hollow Socks, just very simple emails that I'm assuming have worked well for them. So just got a whole bunch of them in here, 14 pages worth, and it's literally just subject line and then the email, just to make it really clear for the agent to know and read that this is subject line and not body copy. And then the rest of this is body. So this you can swap in with anything you want, right? If you have another brand that you want to model, you can swap them for any brand, really. And you can swap them with your own emails too, right? If you just want it to completely refer to your own emails, then just use your own emails here for the agent. And lastly, there's the brand playbook. It is a Google Doc that contains information about the brand. Again, I worked on this earlier. I think I showed you going through some prompts over here by asking about Perfect White Tea and then giving a little bit of a cheeky prompt saying, tell me 10 more little things about them that only their internal team would know. And then I asked it to build a brand playbook document, but it did that, again, context windows matter. It did that without context in referring to Perfect White Tea. So what I ended up doing was telling it to do it specifically perfect white tea, told it wasn't what I was looking for when it comes to what it spat out the first time. So what I ended up doing was saying I was mostly looking for guidelines on how to write and speak in the voice of the brand. And then after that, I told it to update to include examples of emails that are aligned with the brand and how the brand speaks. So the copywriters have something to go off of, almost as if I was telling it that I was going to pass this off to other humans to write with so that it has that context in which, hey, I got to make this to be ready for other people to consume and actually utilize in their work. And then when I read the example that it gave me, it didn't give me too many emails that were broadcast emails. So I just asked it to do that. And then the output of it was actually pretty decent. But again, that's only from me looking from the outside in at Perfect White Tea. If Johnny is looking at this, he might completely disagree with what's been written here. So you can do this for your own brand, right? You can actually write it out yourself when it comes to the quality of this information being accurate and representative of how it is you actually run your brand or run your org of the brand. So that covers the brand playbook side of things. And now let's talk a little bit about managing expectations. So again, as I said before, I think we are in this interesting zone of there's a lot of people who are saying best thing ever does everything for you, right? Which I don't think is necessarily accurate right now when it comes to agents. And then on the other side of things, you have people who are saying, what? Everything is overhyped right now. Might as well wait until, don't bother, wait until final form or better, right? I don't think we're there either right now. I think that we are in this middle ground right now where things are actually pretty good and things are actually usable. And the value that I see from this is it's sort of like switching from walking to driving. Driving might not be the same as teleportation, but driving is still a lot better than walking, especially if you've got to go 100 miles. So I think there's still a lot of utility right now. It's very helpful. I'm using it all the time. It's just making my life a lot more simple because in the past, what I would do is do this entire process in something like ChatGPT or Claude or using both, but I would be manually going through each of them. And also I would often need to update ChatGPT or Claude with most recent examples of what it is that I was trying to tell it to draw inspiration from, which oftentimes was my own emails because it was just missing my tone so much. But in this case, we've got something to work with here that allows for you to get outputs that are much more reliable, but still sit in that middle zone of being a little bit between, let's say, very deterministic on the side when it comes to follow this exactly and having too much creativity on the side. I think we're right in the middle ground of being able to give this agent some level of creativity to work with where it's not 100% reliable on copying, let's say, the example emails that you give it, but also giving you some unexpected surprises on, let's say, angles or words or metaphors or vocabulary that you wouldn't have thought of using because you're just stuck in your own ways. So I think it's really nice for that. So as far as the next evolution of where I think this agent can go, the most obvious one to me is going to be hooking up an additional tool, which is an HTTP request, or rather, it's probably not an additional tool. It's probably going to be a node between these two to actually push the emails that it writes into Klaviyo. And while I'm thinking about this live, I'm actually thinking that what I would actually like better is a human in the loop function, where basically at this point here, it is getting your feedback on whether you like or do not like what it came out with. And so you give it feedback. And then from there, it moves on to refining if it needs to. And then after refining, it's able to push it into Klaviyo and actually schedule it for you. So that basically you can do everything inside of Slack and you don't actually have to go to Klaviyo, at least when it comes to your plain text emails. Another evolution of this that I see is the ability to go back and do images, right? These image style emails. And so this is one of the ones where I think we're not all the way there yet, but with certain models, we're close when it comes to at least the examples of images that it can spit out. I think if you're really good with code, you can probably get the words on there too. But for conceptualization purposes, the system that I'm seeing is that you're actually able to swipe the images so that you are giving the agent lots of inspiration to work with, whether that's from your own brand or another brand. And then it actually creates a creative brief, an email creative brief for you. And then it actually spits out examples of what those images look like. So then your team or your freelancers can go and create it and then push it over to Klaviyo or SendLane or whatever tool that you're using to send out your emails. So those are two evolutions that I'm thinking of and I know are very real to build within the next day or so if I were to choose to. But yeah, that's the overview of the agent that we built. You can build it for yourself just by following along and copying the exact nodes that we've set up here. If you want support from Alfred and I on this directly, you can check out our community by hopping on the newsletter and eventually we'll send out some invites and you can see if it's a fit for you. But that's it. See you in the next one.